ExamPrep.School. NC Public Insurance Adjuster Exam, Exam Code INSNC-PAdj36. There are 4 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Commercial insurance coverages, loss report, loss damage valuation, North Carolina statutes and regulations, personal auto policy, personal insurance coverages, terms and concepts. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. Which of the following statements accurately distinguishes speculative risk from pure risk? A. Speculative risk involves both potential gain and loss, whereas pure risk involves only loss or no loss. B. Pure risk typically arises from investment activities, whereas speculative risk is normally insurable. C. Speculative risk represents only insured exposures, and pure risk allows for profit opportunities. D. Pure risk is uninsurable because it involves intentional loss, while speculative risk is strictly accidental in nature. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is A. The correct answer contrasts that speculative risk includes the possibility of gain or loss, while pure risk involves only the possibility of loss or no loss. Reason B is not correct. Investment activities are not the primary basis for pure risk, and speculative risk is generally uninsurable. Reason C is not correct. Speculative risk is not limited to insured exposures, and pure risk does not offer profit opportunities. Reason D is not correct. Pure risk is often insurable and arises from accidental events, not intentional loss. Question 2. Which description most precisely differentiates moral hazard from moral hazard? A. Moral hazard stems from dishonesty or fraud, whereas moral hazard stems from indifference or carelessness. B. Moral hazard is uninsurable due to intentional acts, while moral hazard is insurable since it's accidental. C. Moral hazard relates to an insurer's adverse selection, whereas moral hazard pertains to economic loss events. D. Moral hazard arises from intentional concealment of information, and moral hazard arises from physical perils. The correct answer is A. The correct response identifies moral hazard as arising from intentional dishonesty, while moral hazard arises from carelessness or lack of concern. Reason B is not correct. Insurability is not the distinguishing factor, and moral hazard involves intentional acts, not accidents. Reason C is not correct. Adverse selection is a pre-contract issue, not the basis of moral or moral hazard distinctions. Reason D is not correct. Intentional concealment defines moral hazard, and physical perils are unrelated to these hazards. Question 3. After a regional brush fire warning, an adjuster inspects a home with a cedar shake roof and wood siding. Under ISO construction classifications, this combination primarily indicates which construction type? A. Non-combustible construction. B. Joisted masonry construction. C. Frame construction. D. Fire-resistive construction. The correct answer is C. The cedar shake roof and wood siding are combustible materials, classifying the structure as frame construction under ISO definitions, which carries the highest fire spread risk compared to other types. Reason A is not correct. Non-combustible construction prohibits combustible materials like wood roofing and siding, so it cannot apply. Reason B is not correct. Joisted masonry requires non-combustible exterior walls and wood floors or roof, but wood siding disqualifies this classification. Reason D is not correct. Fire-resistive construction mandates fire-resistant assemblies for at least 2 hours. Combustible wood materials are not permitted. Question 4. Under a standard fire policy, at what point must the insured's insurable interest exist in order for a covered loss to be payable? A. Only at the policy's inception date. B. At the time of loss. C. At both the policy's inception and the time of loss. D. Only when the policy application is submitted. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is that insurable interest in property insurance must exist at the time of the loss. This ensures indemnity and prevents wagering on future events. Reason A is not correct. Requiring insurable interest only at inception applies to life insurance, not property policies. Reason C is not correct. It is not necessary to have interest at inception if it exists at loss. Only time of loss interest is required. Reason D is not correct. Submission of an application does not establish or satisfy the timing requirement for insurable interest. Question 5. A homeowner has an actual cash value endorsement on their dwelling policy. After windstorm damage to 12-year-old siding, the insurer estimates replacement cost at $15,000 subtracts $9,000 for depreciation and issues a payment of $6,000. Which insurance principle is being applied? A. Principle of insurable interest. B. Principle of subrogation. C. Principle of indemnity. D. Principle of proximate cause. The correct answer is C. The payment reflects replacement cost less depreciation, ensuring the insured neither gains nor loses, exemplifying the principle of indemnity. Reason A is not correct. Insurable interest relates to financial stake at loss inception, not settlement amount calculations. Reason B is not correct. This scenario does not involve transferring recovery rights against a third party after indemnification. Reason D is not correct. Proximate cause addresses loss origin, not how claim payments are determined. Question 6. Which of the following is not typically found on the declarations page of an insurance policy? A. Named insured's mailing address and contact information. B. Policy period dates, effective and expiration. C. Insuring agreement language detailing the insurer's coverage obligations. D. Deductible amounts and coverage limit selections. The correct answer is C. The insuring agreement language is located in the insuring agreement section of the policy, whereas declarations include administrative details like named insured, policy period, limits, and deductibles. Reason A is not correct. Declarations routinely include the named insured's address and contact details to identify who is insured. Reason B is not correct. Declarations always specify the policy effective and expiration dates to define the coverage period. Reason D is not correct. Declarations present deductible amounts and coverage limits so the insured knows their financial obligations. Question 7. An adjuster handling a homeowner's water damage claim notes that the policy contains several conditions such as timely notice and proof of loss, and an exclusion for mold. The adjuster explains to the insured that the primary purpose of these conditions and exclusions is to A. Grant the insurer authority to retroactively change the scope of coverage and applicable premiums once a loss occurs. B. Define insured and insurer obligations for valid claims and carve out losses that cannot be claimed, clarifying risk sharing. C. Provide grounds for denying coverage of losses caused by wear and tear or gradual deterioration, even if policy lists those perils. D. Mandate automatic increases to coverage limits following each filed claim to address inflationary impact. The correct answer is B. This option is correct because conditions outline the duties of both parties, such as prompt notice and proof of loss, and exclusions explicitly list non-covered losses, together establishing clear coverage boundaries and allocating risk appropriately. Reason A is not correct. Insurers cannot retroactively alter coverage terms or premiums after a loss has occurred. policy terms are fixed at issuance. Reason C is not correct. Exclusions apply only to specific perils and do not permit blanket denial of all gradual damage losses. Reason D is not correct. Coverage limits are determined when the policy is written and are not automatically increased by filing a claim. Question 8. Under the standard fire policy, the removal clause extends coverage to property taken from the premises to avoid damage by perils insured under the policy. Which two perils are insured under this policy and thus covered by the removal clause? A. Windstorm and hail. B. Fire and lightning. C. Explosion and smoke. D. Theft and vandalism. The correct answer is B. The removal clause covers property removed to prevent further loss by any peril insured by the policy, which under the standard fire policy are only fire and lightning. Reason A is not correct. Windstorm and hail are not among the two perils insured by the standard fire policy. Reason C is not correct. Explosion and smoke are not named perils in the standard fire policy. Reason D is not correct. Theft and vandalism are excluded under the standard fire policy. Question 9. Under the standard fire policy's suit against U.S. clause, no legal action may be taken against the insurer unless proof of loss has been filed and suit is brought within what period after the loss? A. 6 months. B. 24 months. C. 12 months. D. 36 months. The correct answer is C. The suit against us clause requires that any legal action be initiated within 12 months after the loss, following the filing of a proof of loss, or the action is barred. Reason A is not correct. 6 months is too brief. The policy specifies a 1-year period. Reason B is not correct. 24 months exceeds the 1-year limit set by the clause. Reason D is not correct. 36 months is well beyond the 1-year filing requirement. Question 10. After a fire partially destroys his home, an insured notifies the insurer that he abandons the remaining charged structure and asks the insurer to take possession under the policy's abandonment clause. What is the insurer's best course of action? A. Accept the abandoned structure and pay the full actual cash value. B. Deny the claim, citing the insured's failure to mitigate the loss. C. Take possession of the salvage and deduct salvage value from the settlement. D. Reject the abandonment and require the insured to protect the remaining structure and handle salvage. The correct answer is D. The abandonment clause does not obligate the insurer to accept abandoned property. The insurer may reject abandonment and require the insured to protect the remaining structure and arrange for salvage. Reason A is not correct. This incorrectly implies the insurer must accept abandoned property, but there is no such obligation under the policy. Reason B is not correct. A denial for failure to mitigate is not supported solely by an insured's attempt to abandon property under this clause. Reason C is not correct. While the insurer has salvage rights, it is not required to take possession of abandoned property before settlement. Question 11. 3 months after a fire damages her detached garage, an insured submits the proof of loss required by her standard fire policy. The policy mandates proof of loss within 60 days after the insurer's request, but no extension was granted. What right does the insurer have? A. May deny the claim due to failure to submit proof within 60 days. B. Must accept proof submitted within 90 days. C. Is required to send a notice before denying for late proof. D. Loses the right to deny once it inspects the loss. The correct answer is A. The policy requires proof of loss within 60 days after request. Failing to furnish it within that period allows the insurer to deny the claim. Reason B is not correct. There is no 90-day grace period for proof of loss under this policy provision. Reason C is not correct. The policy does not obligate the insurer to provide advance notice before denying based on late proof. Reason D is not correct. An inspection does not waive the requirement to submit timely proof of loss. Question 12. After insurer and insured dispute the amount of fire damage to a commercial building, the insured invokes the policy's appraisal clause. Which statement best describes the appraisal process under this policy? A. Each party selects an appraiser, and if the appraisers cannot agree, they jointly select a neutral umpire. Agreement by any two is binding on both parties. B. The appraisal process resolves both the amount of loss and liability coverage issues. C. The insurer must pay the disputed amount within 10 days of invocation of appraisal. D. An appraisal award increases the policy limits if the appraised value exceeds them. The correct answer is A. Under the appraisal clause, each party appoints an appraiser. If those appraisers disagree, they select an umpire, and any two agreeing determine the amount of loss, which is binding but does not address coverage. Reason B is not correct. The appraisal clause applies solely to the amount of loss, not coverage or liability issues. Reason C is not correct. There is no requirement to pay within 10 days of invoking appraisal. Payment follows the appraisal award. Reason D is not correct. Appraisal cannot expand policy limits beyond those originally purchased. Question 13. Under a DP1 dwelling policy, which scenario meets the eligibility requirements according to standard policy provisions? A. A newly constructed dwelling currently unoccupied and awaiting completion. B. A dwelling occupied by a hair salon that utilizes 30% of the first floor area for business operations. C. A three-family dwelling where the owner resides in one unit and leases the other two under written agreements. D. A property with a retail store on the ground floor and living quarters above. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is a three-family dwelling with owner occupancy and leased units because DP1 covers 1 to 4 family dwellings occupied by the insured or tenants, whereas business occupancy over 25%, dwellings under construction, and retail store operations are not eligible. Reason A is not correct. Dwellings under construction and unoccupied do not meet the eligibility criteria in dwelling policies. Reason B is not correct. Business use that occupies 30% of floor area exceeds the incidental business limit and thus is ineligible. Reason D is not correct. Retail store operations do not qualify as incidental uses, making that occupancy ineligible. Question 14. Under the DP2 dwelling policy, coverage B pertains to which category of property? A. The primary dwelling structure identified in the declarations. B. Equipment and furnishings used in a trade or business on the premises. C. Personal property owned by the insured and located on the insured premises. D. Private structures detached from the dwelling by clear space, including garages and sheds. The correct answer is D. Coverage B extends to private structures detached from the dwelling by clear space, such as garages and sheds, while the other coverages focus on the dwelling, personal property, or business equipment. Reason A is not correct. The primary dwelling structure is covered under coverage A, not coverage B. Reason B is not correct. Business equipment and furnishings on the premises are not included in coverage B. Reason C is not correct. Personal property is insured under coverage C, not under coverage B. Question 15. An insured has a dwelling program DP1, basic form policy on a rental property. Recent events include a hailstorm that dented the metal siding, rioters breaking multiple windows, pipes freezing and bursting in the basement, and a natural gas line within the dwelling that leaked and exploded, destroying the kitchen. Under the DP1 policy, which loss would be covered? A. Hail damage to the siding. B. Water damage from frozen and burst pipes. C. Window breakage from rioters. D. Explosion of the interior natural gas line. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is the explosion of the interior natural gas line because DP1 basic form covers only fire, lightning, and internal explosions, and excludes hail, riot damage, and freeze-related water losses. Reason A is not correct. Hail is not a named peril under the DP1 basic form and so is excluded. Reason B is not correct. Damage from freezing or burst pipes is not covered under the DP1 basic policy. Reason C is not correct. Riot or civil commotion damage is not among the 3 basic DP1 perils. Question 16. An insured holds a dwelling program DP2 broad form policy. After a mild earthquake, the building's foundation developed major cracks. Under the DP2 policy's named perils, which loss would not be covered? A. Porch roof collapse due to ice and snow accumulation. B. Foundation cracks from the earthquake tremor. C. Water damage from an accidental plumbing discharge. D. Hail damage to exterior window panes. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is foundation cracks from the earthquake because DP2 broad form excludes earth movement perils such as earthquakes, while covering collapse from ice or snow, accidental discharge of water, and hail. Reason A is not correct. Collapse due to weight of ice or snow is a covered broad form peril. Reason C is not correct. Accidental discharge of water from plumbing is covered under DP2 broad form. Reason D is not correct. Hail is an extended named peril under the DP2 policy. Question 17. Which homeowner's policy form provides open perils coverage for both the dwelling and personal property? A. HO2. B. HO5. C. HO3. D. HO4. The correct answer is B. The HO5 form extends open perils coverage to both the dwelling and personal property, whereas HO3 limits personal property to named perils, and HO2 limits both to named perils. HO4 covers only personal property for renters. Reason A is not correct. This form ensures both dwelling and personal property only against named perils. Reason C is not correct. This form ensures the dwelling against open perils but restricts personal property to named perils. Reason D is not correct. This form applies to renters and covers only personal property, not the dwelling. Question 18. Which individual is eligible for an HO6 condominium unit owner's policy? A. Owner-occupant of a manufactured home. B. Owner of a condominium unit. C. Tenant renting an apartment unit. D. Owner-occupant of a 2 to 4 family dwelling. The correct answer is B. HO6 is designed specifically for owners of condominium units. It does not apply to manufactured homes, rental tenants, or multifamily dwellings owned by the occupant. Reason A is not correct. This policy does not cover manufactured homes. Reason C is not correct. Renters use the HO4 form, not HO6. Reason D is not correct. Owners of multifamily dwellings use HO3 or other forms, not HO6. Question 19. In an HO policy, coverage C designates which type of protection? A. Personal property. B. Other structures. C. Dwelling. D. Loss of use. The correct answer is A. Coverage C specifically ensures personal property owned or used by the insured, while coverage A covers the dwelling, coverage B covers other structures, and coverage D covers loss of use. Reason B is not correct. Coverage B applies to structures other than the dwelling. Reason C is not correct. Coverage A applies to the dwelling itself. Reason D is not correct. Coverage D reimburses additional living expenses, not personal property. Question 20. Under a homeowner's policy, which person qualifies as a resident relative of the named insured? A. A child attending college full-time who lives off-site. B. A cousin residing in the insured's household. C. A boarder who pays rent and lives in the home. D. A guest staying for 2 weeks. The correct answer is B. A resident relative is a family member related by blood, marriage, or adoption who resides in the household. College students living away temporarily, boarders and guests are excluded. Reason A is not correct. Full-time students living away temporarily do not count as resident relatives. Reason C is not correct. Boarders or renters are not considered resident relatives. Reason D is not correct. Temporary guests are excluded from the resident relative definition. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below. We read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.